Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. John White, WebMD's Chief Medical Officer and host of the Spotlight On series from WebMD's Health Discovered podcast. For this special two-part episode, you'll hear up close and personal journeys about being diagnosed with a rare type of cancer, multiple myeloma.
I started in myeloma nearly 25 years ago. And at that time, the average expectation of life in someone with myeloma was maybe 1 to 2 years. But even just in this last 10 to 12 years, we have doubled, if not tripled, the average survival of patients. I saw a new patient this week, and we had this conversation that based on what we've done over the last decade, my expectation is that patient's going to live more than 10 years.
Listen to Health Discovered on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the Proactive Caregiving Podcast. As a CPA with over 20 years as an industry accountant, Jessica stepped away from the corporate world to become a full-time caregiver for her mother. Having learned invaluable lessons along the way, she is now here to share those with you and to invite you to join her on this caregiver's journey. Here is your host, Jessica Cannon.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am the Proactive Caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. So today I want to talk to you about making your caregiver dreams come true. And the reason I bring this up is because years ago, when I finally received confirmation of the type of dementia Mom was living with, it brought about that bittersweet moment. Bittersweet as in the confirmation. Yay, we finally know. But the confirmation, the weight of what it means. So the more I researched FTD, the more I worried about how much time we had left. How much time do we have left before she begins to forget who we are? How much time do we have left to plan anything with her at all? So I think you've probably experienced this yourself, but life can become filled with so many different types of distractions that we lose track of time and we forget about how much time has passed until we're faced with that moment with the loss of time or the potential that we could be losing time. This is why my next guest, she was faced with a different time racing against the clock. I wanted her to come on to share her story. Ashely Jackson is the founder of Timeless Dream Events, and she's also the author of Lost Travel Found. She was blessed to be given the time to actually claim the titles of wife, caregiver, and even event planner now. I asked Ashely to join because you will see her light shine through as she shares her story. Very inspirational. Because becoming a caregiver at 31, it created this overwhelming pressure that many of us feel. That pressure when you become a sole breadwinner or the housekeeper and cook, and all these challenges come piling in. And for her, it happened even before she was able to say, I do. Because of this, Ashely is able to sympathize with so many others facing similar dilemmas because she will never forget the time when she was faced against possibly not being granted and blessed with a time with her loved one. Back in March of 2017, only 3 months after getting engaged to her now husband, Troy. With all her hope and determination to love and care for him, the weight of an unpredictably rare type of cancer with a 35% survival rate, it set all of their plans in a different direction. They knew the importance of setting aside engagement party towards actually getting on the ball and setting up time for chemotherapy, radiation, and surgeries. Their moment was going to have to wait at that particular time. But thankfully, by March of 2020, Ashely and Troy were able to speak their vows to one another. So through this divinely timed experience, Ashely realized what her purpose in life was. And it's amazing to me when I hear caregivers speak about their purpose, finding their purpose in life through these type of tragedies and traumatic situations. Timeless Dream Events was born out of her pain, and it became something that helped her build this mission and vision around being able to provide terminally ill people with that opportunity to share with their loved ones and family members, to have that chance to celebrate life and love while they can. She plans various different events, and she does this sometimes on a short notice because each situation is unique and has sensitive details. Ashely has been humbled beyond what anybody can imagine, but she's turned her pain into blessings for others. And that's why I'm so glad to have you here with me today, Ashely. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Absolutely, because this is one of those stories that, every caregiver experiences all kinds of stress, and we go through trauma for various reasons. But I can't imagine when you're at that point in life, and I don't know if you were that little girl that had been dreaming of that marriage, wedding dress, reception, the whole thing since you were little bitty, and then having that moment come and feeling like it was pulled away from you. What was that like?
Yeah, so just going back to 2017, I'm a little obsessed with Disney, so that's a precursor. My boyfriend at the time, Troy, and I were at Disney World in Florida celebrating the new year together, and he proposed to me right before the fireworks went off in front of Cinderella's castle. So I'm like, how can I say no to that? So we became engaged that night, and then, like you were saying in your introduction, March 28th of 2017 is when our roller coaster kind of came crashing down. And so he was diagnosed with a rare type of cancer, and it was in stage 4. So immediately we're on this high and like just come crashing down, because in the past, when I've heard cancer and stage 4 together, I've only known death. So I'm just like, really? I just promised forever love with my fiancé, and now these doctors are telling me he has this cancer. And we immediately just jump right into, okay, instead of planning our engagement party, we're planning how to get to and from his treatments, what treatment's going to go first. I became the sole breadwinner because treatment was basically his job. He was sometimes in treatment from anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday. So yeah, and thankfully I worked from home at that point already. So I was working from home before it became a thing during pandemic, which I was grateful for. And I know not all caregivers have that. But I would sit while he's getting his chemo or radiation or both. It just depended upon the day. I would sit beside him and I would be working. Also, when we get home, cooking, cleaning. I always say I was his chauffeur as well, because it was an hour and a half one way to get to his treatment, and then an hour and a half back home. So I was a little bit of all the things. I had to learn different tricks and tools and skills that were way out of my comfort zone because I don't come from a medical background at all. I come from a business background. So it was very, very uncomfortable, but I knew it's something I had to do, or else he wasn't going to survive. And that's kind of where we were at. It seems a little dramatic, but that's where we were. The rarity of the cancer was because of the placement of the tumor, which started in his nasal cavity. Oh, wow. And since I've started on my caregiver advocacy journey, I've only met 2 other people that have had the same cancer as Troy. Wow. And that's been in the past 4 years. I've only met 2 other people. And even online and support groups is very rare to find someone that understands exactly this type,
which makes it
the
difficult.
Devastation that it can cause.
It makes it really difficult because it adds to that feeling of isolation almost. Caregivers are already feeling that sense of disconnect because sometimes these types of like having to care for your loved one in the way you were caring for them, and that especially the long drive, I'm sure that left very little time for you to connect with other friends and family even. So it makes you feel so much more isolated. And then being able to connect with someone to understand the actual type of cancer that he's having treatment for made it even harder.
Absolutely. And to even go a little bit further with it, I met one of them that I met. It was actually the caregiver. So it was the daughter of someone that cared for their father with it, and he had passed, so he didn't survive it. Wow. So it was just very, very eye-opening to just go through this whole experience. And at 31 years old, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just glad Troy gave me grace because I made mistakes, which I know we all do. Right. We try to be perfect. We try to be strong. But I'm here to say you don't have to always wear that cape. Right. You can take the Superwoman cape off because, listen, I'm tired. Sometimes I'm just plain tired and I want to put it on the hook for one night. I want to take the cape off and put it up for one night.
At least, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back and see what was life like for you before you guys were thrown into this new world of existing and surviving.
Oh, yeah. I like how you worded that. So we were really active. Like we ran 5Ks almost weekly. We would run almost every other day together to prepare for the 5Ks. We did a half marathon. We traveled on a whim as much as we could get away. Again, I'm obsessed with Disney, so he had to learn to like Disney. I'm not going to say he loves it, but he had to learn to like it for my sake. And there was restaurants, types of food that we would both like to frequent and enjoy. Some of those things have vastly changed since he's gone through the treatment. One, for anybody that might be listening that has been affected by cancer, whether it's yourself or someone you're caring for, that chemotherapy and radiation can change your taste buds, makes you sick. So then you just don't want that type of food anymore, or, whatever it be, he's tired. So it's not like we're going to run a half marathon tomorrow. And there's just been a little things here and there that has changed, that seems bigger to us, but it hasn't hindered us in the way that we can't find ways to have fun and live, either. So I try not to focus on what we can't do. So he can walk or lightly jog for a mile with me.
Nice.
Or we might be able to get up and have a dance party for 5 to 10 minutes to get some of the jitters and anxious feelings out of our bodies. Cool. We might sing high, loud, and off key one of our favorite songs. Like I try to focus in on the good in the things, so that it doesn't make me so sad about some of the things that we can't do to the same extent.
Right, right. So I know in those moments of it being like this was the love of, this is the love of your life, and being faced with this, especially right before you actually said your vows to each other, did you feel like you were a caregiver? Did you actually take that title later down the road, or did you actually recognize that you became a caregiver?
That's a really good question. I had no clue I was a caregiver. I didn't know what that was. I thought a caregiver was you take care of your parents when they get older.
Right.
So I was like, well, that'll be me in 30, 40 years when I have to take care of my mom. It wasn't until about a year down my caregiving journey when a nurse actually asked me how my caregiving journey was. And I said, what do you mean? What is that? And she's like, honey, you're a caregiver. I'm like, well, where's my money? Because I'm like, well, I'm not getting paid. She's like, no, you're a family caregiver. I said, oh, okay. Well, I just stepped up to the plate because who else was going to care for him? It just wasn't a thought. There was not a title to it. It was love. It was done out of love.
I love the way you put it that way, because that's what we do. We respond to the needs of our loved ones, and we don't even recognize that response is a very caring and nurturing response.
Right. Absolutely.
So as you were continuing to care for him and balance your work, I love the way you mentioned it, because I felt the same way. I'm not a medical professional. I didn't have anywhere close to any kind of medical background. I think I remembered taking a CPR class when I was, teenage years when I was babysitting. But since then, my mind was never in that direction. And other than having my own doctor's appointments, I just never really thought about any of it. But I, like you, I came from that business background, stepping into this very highly world of medical needs. And so that transition for you, what was that like? Did you feel like you were leaving something behind, or just scared out of your mind? I mean, how did that transition work for you?
All of the things you just said. I guess what kind of scared me the most was just the unknowing, right? The unknown. Right. And then I'm very confident when it comes to what I know, to what I do well at. Right. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, so I wasn't very confident. It was very interesting because, if I saw he needed something, there was a need, and I might not necessarily know what to do, I was asking questions. He's very kind of quiet. I'm more so the tiger in the relationship. Like, I am the go-getter. I'm asking the questions, and he's probably sitting back behind me, like rolling his eyes. Like, hey, I got to know these things. I got to know what to look out for, because I don't want you to pass out because, the treatment was supposed to stop, but the nurse was over there helping someone else, or,
right.
I got to look for signs. And then when you come home on the weekends, I can't call the doctor on the weekend. Like, I am the doctor. Yeah. I am the nurse. Yep. So you've got me for Saturday and Sunday, buddy. Sorry to tell you, but, but it was very interesting learning different words. Still half of them I can't pronounce. but like really taking the time to, like when the doctor's offices give you those printouts, when you've gone to an appointment or whatever,
Right.
actually taking the time to read the things,
Yes.
seeing the side effects of the different chemotherapies, because my husband's had multiple chemotherapies. I can't even pronounce any of them, but um, it was just very interesting to kind of see the different side effects. And then I would try to go online and see, like, okay, because he might get sick with this chemo, maybe I should give him like some peppermint tea to offset his tummy being upset, or, like just trying to find different like remedies that aren't crazy to get him through the illness from the illness. So it was a very interesting time. And even still to this day, I find myself kind of on high alert, like because of the placement of the tumor. Like if he has a nosebleed, or if he says, "Oh, I'm a little stuffy, I have like maybe a head cold, or I have a headache," I'm like, "What?
Yeah.
Like, how bad is it?
Exactly.
Is the tumor bad, or is it just like change of the weather bad?" Like so it's I still have those feelings, and kind of like let's go, if I gotta take you to the hospital. And I think it will lessen through the years, but once you've been diagnosed with cancer, you're seeing a doctor for life, whether that's every 3 months, every 9 months, every year. So I think the feelings, the anxiety will lessen through the years, but I always will remember what I learned from the very first part of his treatment, signs to look out for, and just who to contact and who to go to. That information will always stay with me.
It's really important. And what I find interesting is that many couples start their marriage and they get to grow together before they're faced with this kind of dilemma. But you started out your relationship with it. So by starting out with it like that, do you feel like time is already running out for you guys?
That's a good question. You've got some really good questions, actually. So I'll also add in, because I do get asked a lot, did I think about calling off the wedding or not marrying him?
Right.
And it wasn't a question for me, like whether I wanted to marry him or not, because I had finally found someone that matched my crazy, matched my, just he knows me.
Right.
So that wasn't a doubt in my mind. I did ask if we could postpone until like when he was out of treatment.
Right.
But he kept saying, no, like we had already booked our date before he was diagnosed.
Oh, wow.
We had already booked our venue, and he's like, this is the date that I'm going to make it to and see you walk down the aisle. This is the reason why I'm doing my treatment, because of this date, because I finally got you to say yes to me. So we just kept, just along this path. So then once we have gotten married, we're learning we don't always have to fight or flight.
Right.
We're in a stage now where we don't have to fight or flight. Thank God. We're kind of learning what a new normal looks like for us. Do I think we're out of time? Not necessarily. I view time very differently because my father passed away very suddenly 10 years ago. So ever since that point, I've always viewed time differently, because he passed away young. He was 53.
Oh, yeah, very young.
So I always view time. Yeah, I view time very differently, and I think you should seize the day, even though that sounds cliche.
No, that's true.
Now, can we? Yeah. Now, can Troy and I get off to the Bahamas or to Bali or Bermuda anytime we want to? No, there's a pandemic, but we like to sit on the couch and binge watch Netflix or read a book together. We find different ways that gives each of us joy, to seize that moment. And I'm learning more to be in the moment,
Right.
because the memories are what you're going to, be able to grasp, hold on,
Absolutely.
and have those everlasting memories.
And I'm glad you said it that way too about, you know, I'm sad that your dad is no longer with you, but after feeling the loss and living life and knowing that we're not guaranteed tomorrow, it does give you a different perspective.
Right.
I think when my dad passed as well, it gave me that same realization of, wow, there is in fact a time clock, and not what I assume when people are going to be here for decades more and they aren't. It's like we can't make those assumptions. So we definitely have to learn how to live in the moment a little bit more than we have been. So that's one of the things that I think is really interesting, that what came out of this experience for you and Troy is that, when some people say, whether it's an old saying or the Bible joke of, I grew up hearing, if you want to make God laugh, then make a plan. And I realized there are certain things that we can plan, and there's certain things that just kind of happen, and then we have to plan the best out of it. So that seems like what you kind of did with your experience. And so what does Timeless Dream Events mean to you now after going through this experience with Troy? And you're kind of on the other side of this, on the uphill side.
Yes. So we were able to get married in August of 2018 after multiple rounds of chemotherapy, radiation, major surgery. We got married. He had to do that cycle all over again after we returned from our honeymoon, chemotherapy, radiation, another major surgery. And we got to March of 2020, where he was finally deemed cancer free. We were so excited, and it was the miracle we had been praying for. It was like maybe a week or two after, that, when I was kind of sitting here thinking, well, what do I do now? Because I don't have to get in the car and drive him back and forth every day, Monday through Friday now. So what am I supposed to do with myself? Because as caregivers, as you all know, you push yourself to the edge of the plate. Sometimes you fall off the plate, which is what I call burnout. And it's just, you don't think of yourself, and that's exactly what happened. So like in April of 2020, I literally just started bawling my eyeballs out because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what Ashely wanted. I didn't even know who Ashely was outside of being a caregiver and wife, but mostly caregiver, because I always put caregiver first. I have to consciously remind myself to say I'm wife, then caregiver. I invested in myself. I said, look, I have to invest in myself to figure myself out. And Troy was all for it. He said, you know what? The past 3.5 years, you've done all of the things for me. It's your time, because I'm sitting here on the couch or on the bed sleep. I got to rest my body. So you go out and do what you need to do for you. So I hired a business coach, and it took a couple months, but just kind of talking about my life story and my caregiving experience and what my passions are, it just clicked. So Timeless Dream Events was something born out of my own pain, planning a wedding with and for someone that I just wasn't sure if I was going to actually be able to marry. Now I'm able to help others do the same, whether they are chronically or terminally ill or not. I do have clients that come to me just for the simple fact that they read my story on my website and they're like, whoa, this is major. I want to be a part of it. But I have been able to help those that have a very, very short time constraint. either get married or have a celebration of life. So I've been blessed to be able to kind of turn my own mess into a blessing for others. And just it's my purpose is sharing my story for other caregivers to learn from, to you know, empower them to share their experiences. And Timeless Dream Events, I say, is the vehicle to get me there. So I took it up another notch in June of 2021, and I published my first book.
Yes, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Lost Travel Found. I published that, and it's just my story of my grief and caregiving journey, and how I use my passions to work through those like grief and burnout moments that I've had in my life, and my Phoenix Rising story, because I realized at first, when I was writing my story, I was like, this is a love story to my dad and my husband. But then it's like the last third of the book, it actually talks about the love that I found for myself.
Nice.
So it's kind of interesting, because we, like I mentioned earlier, we push ourselves to the back. We're behind the curtain. No one knows about us. But we have to love on ourselves, because I had to realize, if I became ill, if I became sick to the point where I had to go to the hospital, who was going to take care of Troy?
Yeah.
And sure, there might be some people that would step up to do it, but no one's going to do it like I do.
Of course.
So I have to take care of my vessel, my temple, so then therefore I can love on him and others.
Absolutely. And that's something that is, we lose sight of it. And I know most caregivers don't recognize it until they're in that moment of burnout. But even just before that moment of burnout, when we start wondering, who am I anymore? Like, your lives have just blurred from their needs and you as an individual. And it's so important to find yourself and remind yourself of who you are, because I think that in itself, when you can understand that, it's almost like a re-energizing in that, of reminding yourself who you are, whose you are. And like you said, taking care of your temple, it is so incredibly important that we shouldn't have these moments of, something's wrong, I need to go to the hospital because something's wrong. We need to catch it way before that if we can, and not burn ourselves out for our loved ones.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
You've lived it. And so, now stepping into this and helping others celebrate their moments, but at the same time, you're able to not only plan that moment for them, but you have become somewhat of a role model for them as well, to see, this is how I live, this is how we live, and this is how we keep each other in check, in a sense, and keep each other from reaching that moment of burnout.
Yeah. If I can help just even one caregiver avoid what I call burnout city, we don't want to go to that city. We don't like it there. No. It's not fun.
No.
We don't want to waste our money there. Do not go there. So if I can just help at least one to not, burn out, I feel like I've done a great job.
Exactly.
So, I've talking with my mom, she had to take care of my grandma when I was younger, and I watched her, and that left an impression on me what caregiving was. My mom was gone all day. She would come home and just crash, and I forget those times. Like, I think she would crash, but then she would get up and cook. My dad would help out here and there, but my dad wasn't a good cook. Like, let's be real. So he would probably get like us a pizza or some chicken wings,
Backup plan.
The nights where she would stay at the hospital with my grandma. So I kind of had the imprint of what caregiving looked like.
Mm-hmm.
So then when my grandpa was diagnosed with lung cancer in February 2021, I started seeing her go down that pathway again, just that burnout. And I stepped in because I had faith and confidence in what I know now.
Right.
Then I was able to help my mom guide her away from burnout. So that, I said, okay, who can we call for help? You have siblings, you have me.
Mm-hmm.
How about you take a day off, a mental day from work? Like, what are some little things that we can do to kind of help you go through this? And she would tell you, if you asked her, that watching me go through my process and what I do now helped her stay away from burnout.
Good.
I'm glad to be able to help where I can. I'm very open. I'm an open book, honestly. I got a book and I put myself out there.
Quite literally.
But so literally I'm an open book, but I want to help. I really, really want to help.
Yeah.
For anybody that is willing to listen, I want to help.
When the help is needed, because it's like you said, you entered into this world, stepped into his world basically, that of panic and not knowing what to do, and you had a choice, but you made the choice to figure it out. And I think sometimes others that family drama that's introduced, sometimes the sibling rivalries, all that kind of stuff, is because sometimes they don't know what to do or how to do. And sometimes it's easier to walk away, which creates a lot of that turmoil and heartbreak, than it is to figure it out and learn and do exactly what you did. So I give you so much, kudos to you for standing by him, because I'm sure that question that you've been asked several times or were you going to marry still? Well, why wouldn't you at that point? But
yeah, like he says, no one else is going to put up with me. So
you guys, the yin to his yang and back and forth, yes, match made for each other. That's all. So as you're continuing to live the loving life married and with Troy, thankfully cancer-free, do you still feel that urgency to make plans, just as that, just in case, what if? Or do you do it in a sense where you're just enjoying the life that you've been blessed with?
Yeah, so sometimes I'm learning to kind of slow down and go with the flow, have my plans, but kind of just like, all right, we don't have to have the urgency behind it. Every day, learning.
Mm-hmm.
I do, I'm learning. Still something that I have to work on, the urgency part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he also has a daughter. So I am a bonus mom.
Nice.
So I think of it too a lot that, I lost my dad, and I'm always trying to make plans for her to have memories as well, because those are the things that are going to stick with you, right? Like, yes. I don't remember not a one thing that my parents got me when I was in 7th grade.
Right.
But I remember that's the first time I went to Disney. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
So I try to make these memories jointly together, as well as him and I, because we have things that we want to see, we want to do, but also dialing back and being in the moment is becoming even more important as well. Even if it's just us sitting on the couch and watching Netflix, we don't have to be climbing Mount Everest,
right?
So.
Well, and you had mentioned before that you guys used to travel and be able to go. So is that where your lost travel found came from, the the inspiration behind your book?
So it's actually kind of broken up into 3 different parts of my life. So lost is to signify me losing my dad. So I speak really heavily about my dad in the first third of the book. His relationship with me and my brother, him and my mom, him and I personally, and then kind of rolling into, because he passed away, so rolling into my sabbatical that I took to work through my grief. I didn't grieve my dad until maybe 3 years after he passed. And some people, I found they do that. I'm not abnormal. Some people just, they don't grieve. And I was just one of those people. I was making sure everybody else was good. I was making sure my mom was okay.
Yes.
My brother was okay. My grandma was okay. I that's where I had my first significant burnout. And it was a grief. It triggered my whole, okay, you need to do something.
Yes.
And my something was to travel the world for 9 months. So that's where the travel comes into play, and the different things that I got to partake in, people I've met, the lessons that I learned while being abroad. Also, I was with Troy this whole time as well. So I talk about the dynamic of leaving him, but it was okay because he recognized that I was not whole, and I needed to get whole to be better and better for him. And when I got back, is maybe 4 months after I got back is when he proposed to me. And it was kind of, I think it was just all ordained by God. He has a funny sense of humor, but I think the strength that I learned in those 9 months, it helped me carry me through my caregiving journey.
Absolutely.
So, and then I talk about my caregiving journey and finding myself, finding my strength, finding me, finding my love for myself. So it's a combination of a love story to my dad, my husband, and then me, like I mentioned earlier.
That's so cool. And just listening to you, I realized, because one of the things I found about myself through my caregiving journey is that I have many parts within. And what I was hearing from you is that you have a doer part. And sometimes those parts take over and they function sometimes to help us through stages in life. And other times they function so well that it's like you're in autopilot. You don't even realize that it's going and going until there is that trigger point that it's like that doer part finally got tired and just realized, oh, I need a break, which let other parts come forward and gave you a chance to grieve. And in any other time, I know to others that may sound like that's cruel. That's, it's not just God being funny, that's cruel, but that's how I've learned through my own caregiving journey that that's how God works. He works through our trauma. He works through us with that trauma and through our weaknesses, and he strengthens us because look what happened. And then you were able to step in and be there with Troy and now with your mother and your grandmother. So it's a process.
It really is. And I'll be the first one to say it sucks sometimes.
Yes.
But, when I asked my pastor, what the heck? Why do these type of things happen? And he said the same thing, but look at you now.
Exactly.
You had to go through the fire to come out like this. And that's why I like to equate myself to a phoenix rising, because the mythological creature, the bird, the phoenix, it rises out of the ashes to become anew. And that's how I feel.
I love that you say that, because over the last couple of years, I kept toying with the idea of getting a tattoo. And I kept thinking over and over,
Oh,
I want. And I kept getting temporary ones and scrubbing it off, and no. And this notion of the phoenix kept coming up and kept coming up. And then I realized I was falling in love with this idea, this mythological creature of the phoenix, because it is that part of you. Sometimes a part of you has to die inside to be reborn a stronger, wiser sense of
uh-huh.
self. And it's beautiful when it actually
Yeah.
becomes that reborn self. I
Yeah.
love that you say that. I'm still toying with the idea. I haven't really committed to it yet, because at the same time I'm like, I'm too chicken. I don't want the other kind of a bird. I'm too chicken to get the actual tattoo and sit through it. We'll see.
Not so bad.
Eventually. So, how do our listeners find your book, The Lost Travel Found? Where are you listed?
Yeah, so obviously Amazon. So you can find me on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com,
Nice.
target.com, and my personal website, timelessdreamevents.com. And if you order it from my website, I do autograph it for you. But of course, I know some people want their books right away. You can get it on Kindle or, within a day later. So totally understand. But yeah, that's where you can find Lost Travel Found. And of course, some events that I've put on. I do have pictures of Troy, myself, and some of the weddings that I've helped plan. And you can find me all over social media. Like, I'm all over it.
What are you listed as on
Facebook,
social media?
TikTok. Oh my goodness, all over it. Instagram, Timeless Dream Events,
Okay.
and yeah.
That's awesome. Actually, I love that you have turned this part of your life into such a triumphant story, because some may, the grief may overwhelm them and take them under, so to speak. And I just love that you have that inner light that kept you going strong. And I know you most likely had moments that you were trying to hide your exhaustion, but thankfully you recognize the cape doesn't have to stay on all the time. You can take it off and give it a break, and even when you're taking it off, you're still inspiring someone else, because you're showing them it's okay. It's okay to be exhausted. Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't be, with the list of details that go into his care required, what your personal care required, because you're still having to take care of yourself in all of this. That never gets forgotten, or at least it shouldn't.
It shouldn't, but it does, unfortunately.
Right. So as you go forward in this next year, now we're moving on into year number 2 of COVID, it seems. The events are still being planned. I mean, it's still possible, and people are still faced with moments that they need to act quickly. So what is your biggest goal for this coming year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have so many goals.
Good.
But I do want to start writing another book.
Nice.
I'm not sure which direction I want to go in, because I've gotten a lot of feedback in 2 different paths. So we'll see which direction I take. Some want like a detailed travel and how to travel, not only solo, but also how the heck do you travel as a caregiver? Like, how do you make that happen? And then others want me to dive deeper into the grief aspect and be, kind of like a light in that arena, because of how I discussed my grief journey. A lot of grief books out there, they're very kind of stern and kind of like really serious. If you couldn't tell by now, I like to laugh and smile a lot. So I would try to find the bright spots even when it sucked. I would try to find the bright spots in my day through even still throughout my grief and caregiving journey. So another book, hopefully published, either later this year or early next year.
Nice.
My mom and I have plans of launching a podcast of our own, discussing grief and caregiving. So meshing the two together, I think there's a space needed for it. Because a lot of times the person we're caring for does go on, and we just need people to talk more about it. A lot of times we don't like to talk about death, but it's necessary, because once we take our first breath, we're guaranteed to take our last one. It's just in between those two is what we do with our lives is what counts.
Absolutely.
And as far as my events go, I do want to put out there on social media at some point coming up within the next month or two that I do want to give my services away for free to a couple that may find themselves in the same situation that Troy and I found ourselves in.
Absolutely.
So I might put it out there on social media for someone to find me a couple. I haven't worked out those details yet, but it's something that kind of dropped in my heart today, actually. Yeah, those are some of the bigger goals I have this year, and I'm really excited about 2022. Events they've picked up a lot this year, but what's interesting is a lot of people have moved away from 200 people, and they're moving down to the 50, 75, or even some are doing 30 guests at their wedding. So just to keep it simple and simple but full of love.
Right. Well, and another saying that my mother had drilled into my head growing up was, where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely.
And you definitely will make a way for people to celebrate life and love together. I know you will.
Absolutely. I'll try my hardest.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, taking the time to share your story with us, because I want other caregivers to see that through thick and thin, that there are brighter times as they can get through it, and taking the time to plan those events, to have those memories, is so incredibly important, and that they need to reach out to you as soon as they can at timelessdreamevents.com.
Yes.
So thanks for sticking with me today and taking the time, and I will definitely be staying in touch, because planning events is all kinds of events. It doesn't have to be just a wedding.
Right.
I appreciate it.
Exactly. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining in and listening today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this episode gave you a lot more food for thought. Until next time, be proactive. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about proactive caregiving and to hear other episodes of this podcast, please visit www.jessicalizelcannon.com. This podcast is produced by Cannon Light Media, LLC, www.cannonlightmedia.com. Music provided by Chris Paradise.
Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino this year.
I was only playing for fun, so winning this was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's #1 social casino experience. It's serious fun. With over 80 casino-style games to choose from, you too could win life-changing amounts of cash. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and give them a whirl. That's ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void or prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of a winner.